The sky above New York City turned an eerie shade of orange as the alien ship descended. It was massive, larger than any skyscraper, and it hovered silently, casting a shadow over the bustling streets below. People stopped in their tracks, staring upward with a mix of awe and fear. The ship's surface shimmered like liquid metal, reflecting the city lights in strange patterns. No one knew what to expect. Some whispered prayers, others snapped photos, but everyone felt the same thing, a deep, unsettling uncertainty. Inside a secure government building, Rachel Dawson sat at the head of a long table. She was a calm and composed woman in her late 40s, known for her ability to handle crises with grace. Her dark hair was tied back neatly, and her sharp eyes scanned the room as she listened to the heated discussion around her. The United Earth Council had been hastily assembled to respond to the arrival of the aliens, who called themselves the Veil. Representatives from different nations argued loudly, their voices overlapping in frustration. "We can't just walk into negotiations blind," shouted Laura Hayes, a politician from Washington, D.C. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, but her face was flushed with anger. They could be lying about wanting peace. Daniel Carter leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. He was a tall man with short brown hair and a no-nonsense attitude. As a military officer, he didn't trust the Veil's intentions. "Laura's right," he said, his voice low but firm. "We need to prepare for the worst. These aliens might look peaceful now, but we've seen this kind of thing before in movies. First, they say they come in peace, then they turn on us." Rachel raised a hand to quiet them. "Arguing isn't going to help," she said firmly. "We don't have time for panic or assumptions. The Veil want to negotiate, and we need to approach this carefully. If we act rashly, we risk starting a conflict we aren't ready for." Ethan Brooks, a young scientist with glasses and a nervous habit of tapping his pen against the table, spoke up hesitantly. "But what if they're telling the truth? What if they really do have technology that could change everything for us? This could be the biggest opportunity humanity has ever had." Laura glared at him. "Or it could be a trap. You're too quick to trust them, Ethan. We can't afford to be naive." The room fell silent as Rachel stood up. She walked to the window and looked out at the towering alien ship. Its presence was overwhelming, a reminder of how small humanity truly was in the grand scheme of things. "Listen to me," she said, turning back to the group. "I know you're scared, and you have every right to be. But fear won't solve this. We need to stay united. Whether the Veil are friends or foes, we'll find out soon enough. Until then, we stick to diplomacy." Outside, the streets were filling with people. News helicopters circled the ship, their spotlights bouncing off its metallic surface. Protesters gathered near the edges of the restricted zone, holding signs that read "Go home, aliens," and "Peace, not war." Reporters shouted questions at anyone who would listen, while parents pulled their children close, unsure whether to comfort them or run. Back in the meeting room, Daniel muttered under his breath, "Diplomacy won't save us if they decide to attack." He glanced at Rachel, who caught his eye. For a moment, neither of them said anything. Then Rachel nodded slightly, acknowledging his concerns without giving in to them. As night fell, the council finalized their plans. Rachel would lead the delegation to meet the Veil aboard their ship in the morning. Daniel insisted on accompanying her, along with Ethan and a small security team. Laura reluctantly agreed, though she made it clear she didn't approve of Rachel's leadership. That night, Rachel couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling of her hotel room, replaying the day's events in her mind. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her. Tomorrow, she would face beings from another world, beings whose motives were still unknown. Would she be able to protect humanity, or would her choices lead to disaster? Far above the city, the Veil ship remained motionless, watching and waiting. The next morning, Rachel Dawson and her team boarded a small shuttle that would take them to the Veil mothership. The craft was sleek and unfamiliar, provided by the aliens themselves. As they ascended, the city below grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared entirely. Outside the windows, the massive alien ship loomed ahead, its surface shimmering like sunlight on water. Daniel Carter sat stiffly in his seat, one hand resting on the weapon at his side. Ethan Brooks stared out the window, his face pale but excited. Laura Hayes, who had insisted on coming despite her earlier protests, clutched her notebook tightly, scribbling notes as if to steady herself. When the shuttle docked, the group stepped into a vast chamber filled with glowing blue light. The air felt different, thicker, colder, and there was a faint hum that seemed to vibrate through their bones. Standing before them were three Veil, towering beings whose bodies looked almost liquid, shifting and rippling under the light. Their faces were smooth and featureless, except for two glowing slits where eyes might be. They spoke without moving their mouths, their voices resonating directly in everyone's minds. It was unsettling, like hearing whispers from inside your own head. "Greetings, representatives of Earth," said the tallest of the Veil. Its voice was deep and calm, yet carried an edge of authority. "We are the Veil. We seek cooperation, not conflict." Rachel stepped forward, her heart pounding but her expression steady. "Thank you for meeting with us," she said, choosing her words carefully. "We hope to understand your intentions and work together peacefully." The Veil tilted their heads slightly, as though studying her. "We require access to your planet's resources," one of them continued. "In return, we offer technology far beyond what you possess. This exchange will benefit both our species." Daniel frowned, his hand tightening on his weapon. "What kind of resources?" he asked sharply. "And how do we know this isn't just a setup to exploit us?" The Veil paused, their glow dimming slightly. "Your suspicion is understandable," they replied. "But we'd assure you, our needs are minimal compared to the advancements we can provide. Energy sources, minerals, nothing that would harm your world permanently." Ethan leaned forward, intrigued. "What kind of technology are we talking about? Could it help solve problems like climate change or disease?" The Veil hesitated before answering. "Yes, such solutions are within our capabilities. However, specifics must wait until trust is established." Laura interrupted, her tone sharp. "That's convenient. You want something from us but won't give details about what you're offering. How do we know this isn't a trick?" The tallest Veil turned its gaze toward her, making her shift uncomfortably. "Distrust serves neither side," it said simply. "If you reject cooperation, the consequences will fall upon all of humanity." Rachel quickly interjected, trying to ease the tension. "Let's focus on finding common ground," she suggested. "Can you tell us more about your situation? Why do you need these resources now?" The Veil exchanged glances, or at least it seemed like they did. Their movements were so fluid that it was hard to tell. "Our homeworld faces challenges," one admitted after a moment. "Survival depends on alliances with other civilizations. Earth is not the first planet we have approached." Daniel crossed his arms. "And what happened with those other planets? Did they cooperate, or did they end up regretting it?" The Veil didn't answer immediately. Instead, they changed the subject. "Time is limited. Decide soon whether you wish to proceed. Further delay may force actions neither side desires." As the meeting ended, the humans returned to their shuttle in silence. Once aboard, Laura broke the quiet. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "They gave us nothing concrete. No proof, no guarantees, just vague promises and threats." Ethan shook his head. "I think they're telling the truth about wanting to help. But I agree, they're holding back too much information." Daniel clenched his jaw. "Mark my words, they're planning something. We should have brought more security." Rachel sighed, rubbing her temples. "We need to report back to the Council and decide our next move, whether we trust them or not. Ignoring them isn't an option." As the shuttle descended back to Earth, none of them noticed a faint ripple in the air near the Veil ship, a subtle sign that something was happening beneath the surface of their diplomatic facade. Back on Earth, the news of the meeting with the Veil spread quickly. Reporters swarmed outside the government building where Rachel Dawson and her team had gathered to debrief the council. Cameras flashed, and microphones were thrust forward as they tried to get any information about what had happened aboard the alien ship. Inside, the mood was tense. The council members sat around the table, their faces showing a mix of curiosity, fear, and frustration. Rachel stood at the front of the room, explaining the details of the encounter. "The Veil claim they need access to our resources," she said, her voice calm but firm. "They promised advanced technology in return, though they didn't give specifics. They also hinted that refusing could lead to serious consequences." Laura Hayes interrupted immediately, her voice sharp. "Consequences? That sounds like a threat to me. How can we even consider working with them if they're already trying to intimidate us?" Daniel Carter nodded in agreement. "Exactly. I don't trust them. Something about this whole situation feels off. We need to prepare for the worst-case scenario, because it's probably coming." Ethan Brooks, however, wasn't ready to give up on diplomacy just yet. "But what if they're telling the truth?" he asked, leaning forward earnestly. "What if their technology could solve some of humanity's biggest problems? Climate change, energy shortages, diseases. We could fix all of that. Isn't it worth taking a chance?" The room erupted into arguments. Some council members sided with Laura and Daniel, calling for caution and even suggesting military readiness. Others supported Ethan, believing that rejecting the Veil outright would be a missed opportunity. Voices grew louder, hands slammed on the table, and tempers flared. Rachel raised her hands, trying to bring order to the chaos. "Everyone, please," she called out. When the noise finally died down, she continued, "We can't make decisions based on fear or blind optimism. We need facts. More meetings with the Veil might give us clearer answers." But her words did little to ease the tension. Outside, protests were growing larger by the hour. Crowds filled the streets, holding signs that read "No to aliens" and "Protect our planet." Social media buzzed with hashtags like #RejectTheVeil and #StandWithEarth. Public opinion was divided, and the pressure on the council was mounting. Later that evening, Daniel cornered Rachel in a quiet hallway. "You saw how evasive they were," he said, his tone urgent. "They're hiding something, Rachel. I know it. If we don't act now, we might lose our chance to defend ourselves." Rachel sighed, rubbing her temples. "I understand your concerns, Daniel, but rushing into conflict won't help either. We need to think carefully about this." Daniel shook his head. "Careful thinking won't stop them if they decide to attack. I'm going to start gathering intelligence, recording everything, analyzing their movements. Someone has to be ready." Meanwhile, Ethan stayed late in the briefing room, reviewing notes from the meeting. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the Veil's story than they were letting on. Flipping through pages of data, he noticed something odd. A slight discrepancy in the way the Veil described their homeworld's crisis. It was subtle, almost unnoticeable, but it made him wonder, were they being completely honest about why they needed Earth's resources? As days passed, the divisions within the council deepened. Laura used her political connections to sway public opinion against the Veil, painting them as invaders rather than potential allies. Protesters became more aggressive, clashing with police near the edges of restricted zones. In response, the Veil sent a message warning that escalating hostility would not go unanswered. Rachel watched the chaos unfold on the news, her heart heavy. She knew time was running out. Humanity had always been quick to divide, slow to unite. And now, faced with a decision that could shape its future, the cracks in its foundation were beginning to show. The next meeting with the Veil took place just 2 days later, but the atmosphere had changed completely. When Rachel Dawson and her team arrived aboard the alien ship, they were met not with calm diplomacy, but with an icy tension. The Veil stood in the same glowing chamber, their shimmering forms radiating a cold authority. This time, however, their tone was sharp and unforgiving. "You have tested our patience," said the tallest Veil, its voice reverberating like distant thunder. "Your people protest, Your leaders argue among themselves, and your actions speak of distrust. We offered cooperation, yet you respond with hostility. Rachel stepped forward, trying to keep her composure. We're trying to understand your intentions, she said carefully. But many on Earth are afraid. They need reassurance before making such a big decision. The Veil tilted their heads slightly, as if studying her. Then, without warning, one of them moved closer, its form rippling unnervingly. Reassurance, it asked, its voice colder than before. You question us while we wait for your answer. Yet perhaps you should look closer to home for deception. Before anyone could respond, the Veil gestured toward a floating screen that appeared in midair. On it was an image of Earth's oceans, swirling with strange patterns. The colors shifted ominously, revealing something hidden beneath the surface. Alien machinery extracting resources from deep underwater. Gasps erupted from the human delegation. What is this? Rachel demanded, her voice trembling with anger. You said you wanted to negotiate, but you've already started taking what you need. The Veil didn't deny it. Instead, they spoke plainly. Our survival depends on these resources. Negotiation was meant to secure your cooperation, but delays forced us to act. Do not mistake this for betrayal. It is necessity. Daniel Carter clenched his fists, barely containing his rage. This isn't necessity, it's theft. He snapped. You lied to us from the beginning. Ethan Brooks stared at the screen in shock. His mind raced as he tried to process what he was seeing. How long has this been going on? He asked, his voice shaky. And why didn't you tell us sooner? The Veil ignored his questions. Enough. Your species resists even when faced with clear evidence. If you continue to reject cooperation, further measures will be unavoidable. Back on Earth, the revelation caused chaos. Daniel leaked the footage of the ocean extraction to the media, and within hours, the world exploded with outrage. News outlets broadcast images of the alien machinery, accusing the Veil of exploiting Earth without permission. Protesters flooded the streets, demanding immediate action against the invaders. Governments scrambled to respond, torn between seeking revenge and avoiding all-out war. Laura Hayes seized the moment to push her agenda. In televised speeches, she condemned the Veil as untrustworthy aggressors. They came here under false pretenses, she declared. They promised peace but acted with greed. Humanity must stand united, or risk losing everything. Rachel, overwhelmed by guilt and frustration, struggled to hold the council together. Meeting after meeting ended in shouting matches, with no clear path forward. Ethan tried to argue for restraint, pointing out that attacking the Veil might only escalate the situation. But his pleas fell on deaf ears. Fear had taken root, and fear rarely listened to reason. Daniel, meanwhile, worked tirelessly behind the scenes. Using classified military channels, he began planning a counterattack. He believed that showing strength was the only way to protect Earth. Secretly, he coordinated with allies who shared his vision, preparing for a strike against the Veil's operations in the ocean. As tensions mounted, Rachel found herself increasingly isolated. Her attempts to broker peace were dismissed as weakness, and her leadership was openly questioned. Late one night, sitting alone in her office, she replayed the Veil's words in her mind. Do not mistake this for betrayal. It is necessity. She wondered if there was truth in their claim. Was their desperation real? Or was it just another lie? Outside, the protests grew louder, echoing through the city streets. The world teetered on the brink of conflict, unsure whether to fight or negotiate. And high above, the Veil ship remained silent, watching and waiting. The council's decision came swiftly and decisively. After days of heated arguments, protests, and leaked footage showing the Veil's secret resource extraction, humanity made its choice: rejection. The vote was almost unanimous, with only a handful of members, including Ethan Brooks, opposing it. Rachel Dawson, feeling defeated and betrayed by the fractured council, resigned her position as leader of the delegation. She stepped aside, leaving Daniel Carter to take charge of Earth's response. Under Daniel's leadership, the military mobilized quickly. Nations set aside their differences, uniting under a single goal: to drive the Veil away from Earth. Troops were deployed to coastal regions, and naval fleets surrounded areas where the alien machinery had been detected. Scientists worked around the clock to analyze the Veil technology, hoping to find weaknesses that could be exploited. Meanwhile, Laura Hayes used her political influence to rally public support for the cause, portraying the Veil as invaders who had no right to Earth's resources. As preparations intensified, tensions reached a breaking point. The Veil, sensing the shift in humanity's stance, issued one final warning. "Your actions will determine the outcome," they said in a broadcast transmitted directly into every communication device on Earth. "Choose wisely." But their words fell on deaf ears. Humanity had already chosen. The first strike came at dawn. Under Daniel's command, a team of elite soldiers launched an operation to destroy one of the Veil's underwater extraction sites. Using advanced submarines equipped with experimental weapons, they descended into the depths of the ocean. The mission was risky, but Daniel believed it was necessary to send a message. Earth would not back down. When the team reached the site, they found the alien machinery embedded deep in the seabed. It pulsed with an eerie blue light, humming softly as if alive. The soldiers placed explosive charges carefully, ensuring maximum damage. As they retreated, the explosives detonated, sending shockwaves through the water. The machinery collapsed in on itself, sparking and fizzling out. Back on land, news of the successful strike spread rapidly. People cheered, celebrating what seemed like a victory against the invaders. But the celebration was short-lived. Within hours, the Veil retaliated. Their ships descended over major cities worldwide, disabling power grids and communication networks. Streets plunged into darkness, and panic erupted as people realized how vulnerable they truly were. Rachel, now sidelined from the council, watched the chaos unfold from her apartment. She felt powerless, yet she couldn't shake the feeling that there was still a chance for peace, if only someone would listen. Determined to act, she reached out to sympathetic members of the Veil delegation, hoping to arrange a secret meeting. Her efforts paid off when a moderate faction agreed to speak with her, claiming they opposed the rogue elements responsible for the resource theft. Meanwhile, Daniel faced growing pressure to escalate the conflict. Military leaders urged him to launch more attacks, targeting additional extraction sites and even the Veil mothership. But Daniel hesitated, knowing that each move brought humanity closer to full-scale war. He confided in Ethan, who had become increasingly vocal about finding alternatives to violence. "We can't keep doing this," Ethan said during one late-night conversation. "Every attack makes them angrier. There has to be another way." Daniel sighed, rubbing his temples. "I know, but most people won't listen to reason right now. They're scared. And when people are scared, they want action." As the days passed, both sides suffered heavy losses. Cities struggled to recover from the Veil's strikes, while Earth's forces faced challenges combating the aliens' superior technology. Amid the destruction, Rachel quietly arranged her meeting with the moderate Veil faction. She hoped it wasn't too late to broker a ceasefire, but time was running out. Rachel Dawson met the moderate Veil faction in a secluded location far from prying eyes. The meeting took place in an abandoned warehouse near the coast, chosen for its isolation and lack of surveillance. When the Veil arrived, their presence was as unsettling as ever. Tall, shimmering figures that seemed to blend with the shadows. But unlike the aggressive tone they had shown before, these Veil spoke softly, almost apologetically. "We are not all the same," one of them said, their voice quieter than usual. "The actions taken against your planet were not sanctioned by our entire species. A rogue faction within our leadership made those decisions out of desperation." Rachel listened carefully, her heart racing. She had hoped for this kind of revelation, but hearing it confirmed still felt surreal. "Why didn't you say something sooner?" she asked, keeping her voice steady despite her nerves. If you oppose what's happening, why let it go on? The Veil hesitated, their forms rippling faintly. Our society is fractured, just as yours is, they admitted. Those in power acted without consulting others. By the time we realized the harm being done, it was too late to stop them without risking civil war among our own people. Ethan Brooks, who had accompanied Rachel to the meeting, leaned forward eagerly. So you're saying there's a chance to fix this? To stop the fighting before it gets worse? The Veil nodded slowly. Yes, but only if both sides agree to cooperate. If your leaders continue their attacks, the rogue faction will see it as justification for further aggression. We need a way to separate ourselves from them, to show that peace is possible. Rachel exchanged a glance with Ethan. This was the opening they had been hoping for. We'll do everything we can to make this work, she promised. But convincing humanity won't be easy. Trust has been broken on both sides. Back at the military command center, Daniel Carter faced mounting pressure to escalate the conflict. Reports poured in about new Veil strikes, power plants disabled, hospitals left without electricity, and civilians trapped in darkened cities. Public outrage reached a fever pitch, with many calling for immediate retaliation. Laura Hayes, now a prominent figure in the resistance against the Veil, used her platform to demand stronger action. The aliens have shown us their true colors, she declared during a televised address. They came here to take what they wanted, and now they're punishing us for standing up to them. We cannot back down. Daniel, however, found himself wavering. Despite his earlier conviction, he began questioning whether continued violence would solve anything. He received a call from Rachel later that night, explaining what she had learned from the moderate Veil faction. At first, he dismissed her claims as naive optimism, but as she laid out the evidence, doubt crept into his mind. What if they're telling the truth? He muttered after hanging up. What if we're making things worse by attacking blindly? Ethan joined him shortly afterward, urging him to consider Rachel's plan. She's right, Daniel, Ethan said earnestly. If even part of the Veil want peace, we owe it to ourselves, and to them, to try. Another strike could push the rest of their species against us completely. While they debated, chaos unfolded across the globe. Cities struggled to recover from the Veil's disruptions, and fear spread like wildfire. People hoarded supplies, formed vigilant groups, and turned on one another in their desperation. Governments teetered on the edge of collapse as protests grew more violent. Laura seized the opportunity to consolidate power, positioning herself as a strong leader in a time of crisis. Rachel worked tirelessly behind the scenes, reaching out to anyone willing to listen. Slowly, she began gathering support for a ceasefire proposal. It was a fragile hope, built on trust, that could easily shatter. But as the cost of war became clearer with each passing day, more people started to see the value in giving peace one last chance. High above, the Veil mothership remained silent, watching Earth descend further into turmoil. For the first time, cracks began to show within their ranks as well. The moderates argued for withdrawal, while the rogue faction pushed for dominance. Humanity's fate hung precariously in the balance, caught between two worlds on the brink of collapse. The final act began with a desperate gamble. Rachel Dawson, armed with the information from the moderate Veil faction, presented her case to the fractured council. The room was tense, filled with exhausted and angry faces. Laura Hayes sat at the far end of the table, arms crossed, ready to dismiss anything Rachel proposed. Daniel Carter stood nearby, his expression unreadable, while Ethan Brooks fidgeted nervously in his seat. "We can't keep fighting like this," Rachel said firmly, her voice cutting through the silence. "The Veil aren't united. Some of them want peace. They've been trying to stop the rogue faction but can't do it alone. If we agree to a ceasefire now, we might still have a chance to fix this." Laura scoffed loudly. "You expect us to believe that? After everything they've done, this is just another trick to buy them time." "No," Rachel replied, meeting her gaze without flinching. "It's not a trick. I've spoken to them directly. They're willing to withdraw their forces if we stop attacking. And more importantly, they'll help repair the damage they've caused. Ethan jumped in, supporting Rachel. She's telling the truth. Think about it. If even part of the Veil are on our side, doesn't that give us hope? Fighting isn't working. Every attack makes things worse for everyone. Daniel hesitated, then nodded slowly. I don't like it, but he's right. We're losing too much. People, resources, stability. If there's a way out, we should take it. The council argued for hours, voices rising and falling like waves. In the end, the decision came down to a narrow vote. By a slim margin, they agreed to propose a ceasefire. Rachel immediately contacted the moderate Veil, arranging a meeting aboard their ship to finalize the terms. The negotiations were tense but productive. The moderates revealed that the rogue faction had acted out of desperation after their homeworld faced ecological collapse. They admitted fault for not stopping the resource theft sooner, but insisted they wanted to make amends. In exchange for limited aid to restore their planet, they promised to withdraw completely and share technology to help Earth recover. When the agreement was announced, reactions were mixed. Some celebrated the end of hostilities, while others accused the Council of betrayal. Laura Hayes condemned the decision publicly, vowing to fight against what she called a dangerous compromise. Yet for the first time in weeks, there was a glimmer of calm. Power grids began coming back online, and cities started to heal. Rachel watched the progress from a quiet park, sitting on a bench as sunlight filtered through the trees. She felt drained but hopeful. Humanity had faced its darkest hour and chosen to step back from the edge. It wasn't perfect. Trust would take years to rebuild, but it was a start. Daniel joined her after a while, standing silently beside her. Do you think we did the right thing? He asked eventually. I think we gave ourselves a chance, Rachel replied softly. That's all anyone can ask for. Above them, the Veil mothership began to ascend, breaking through the clouds and disappearing into the sky. Below, life on Earth slowly returned to normal. Scars remained, reminders of how close humanity had come to destruction. But amid the ruins, people began to rebuild, not just their cities, but their faith in cooperation and understanding. For Rachel, Daniel, Ethan, and countless others, the experience changed them forever. They had seen the worst of fear and division, but also the best of resilience and hope. And though the road ahead would be long, they knew one thing for certain. When faced with the unknown, humanity's greatest strength lay in its ability to adapt, to listen, and to find a way forward, together.